When you want your spring break to feel like... and your kids' pool day to feel like... and your hotel bed to feel like... ooh, and room service to feel like... because at Hilton, hospitality feels like...
Your cabana's ready. Would you like fresh towels?
It matters where you stay. Book now at Hilton.com. Hilton, for the stay.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Breaking news.
And tonight on the Rita Cosby Show on the war against Iran, some big developments. Just a little bit ago, Israel's prime minister declared there has been enormous success and that the war could end soon. Take a listen to what he says has been accomplished in such a short bit of time against Iran.
20 days, I can inform you, Iran does not have an ability to enrich uranium or to produce ballistic missiles.
That's enormous. It does not have the ability to enrich uranium or to produce more ballistic missiles. But the missiles are still flying, and they're flying at all of these different oil and gas facilities throughout the Arab world, it seems. Big targets taking place, of course, decimation and some significant damage in places like Qatar and also Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. And in just a little bit ago, a joint statement from much of the Arab world condemning Iran and its attacks. Israel, of course, took the first strike on oil and gas, hitting that big gas field in Iran. And of course, Israel has had so much success taking out so many members of the Iranian regime. Israel also saying they did that move on their own, that it wasn't in coordination with the United States. President Trump saying, I told Israel not to do it. After they did it, I didn't know beforehand, saying there was not any coordination on that strike. And now telling everybody to calm things down when it comes to oil and gas, because that could certainly be catastrophic around the globe. We'll see what happens, because it looks like Iran is continuing the strikes. Meantime, in the world of diplomacy, this is a biggie. And we talked about this last night. President Trump came out, and of course, he was very critical of so many different countries that said, nope, we're not going to help with the Strait of Hormuz, which, of course, is that key waterway, that key strait for so much of the world's oil. And many countries in NATO, Germany said it's not our war. France said when the bombs stop flying, that's when we'll participate. What a bunch of wimps. And so many others said, nope, we're not going to help. And remember, President Trump called them out publicly and said, how dare you? You should be standing beside us. We don't need you now, but this was a test and you guys all failed, and I will remember. Well, what a difference 24 hours makes, especially when you're dealing with the pressure of Trump. All I kept thinking about is if it was Biden, it would have been like, oh, okay, sorry I even asked. But nope, Trump said, how dare they? We will not forget. And surprise, 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 in the last few hours, a number of countries have indeed stepped up. They have essentially said that the UK, Britain, of course, that's part of the UK. You got Germany, you got France, you got a couple others in there, and including Japan, because, of course, President Trump was meeting with the Japanese prime minister. Well, they came forward and said, we will work together somehow. We are showing a willingness to help to secure the Strait of Hormuz. Well, they should, because it's mostly their oil that is actually coming through the strait. Very little of the U.S. oil is. But they're finally stepping up. And President Trump today in the White House, when he had the Japanese prime minister sitting by his side, said that virtually all the countries are agreeing that going after Iran and eradicating this evil regime was a big plus for the world. Take a listen.
But we're doing this excursion, and when it's completed, we're going to have a much safer world. And the Prime Minister agrees with me on this. She considers it to be terrible what Iran did. I think every country does, just about every country does. Iran is a serious threat to the world, to the Middle East and to the world. And everybody agrees with me. I think virtually every country agrees with me on that. So I wanted to put out that fire. And I said, if I do that, oil prices will go up, the economy will go down a little bit. I thought it would be worse, much worse, actually. I thought there was a chance it could be much worse. It's not bad, and it's going to be over with pretty soon.
And then, as he is sitting next to the Japanese prime minister, he said, and I've sat in a lot of these White House press, moments where one person gets one question, the American press gets to ask a question. And obviously, a lot of times, especially at this moment, everybody wants to ask questions of President Trump. They always want to ask questions of President Trump. But obviously, huge news day. There's so much going on. So they're all asking questions. And then the Japanese press turns to President Trump and he says, do you have a question? And it's a Japanese reporter asking, do you regret, maybe should you have given more information to allies that you were going to attack Iran? In other words, you shouldn't have had really such a surprise attack. Don't you think you should have briefed the allies like Japan and others that you were about to do this attack? And President Trump had, I think, the jaw-dropping answer of the year. This answer went viral. As soon as I heard it, I went, I can't believe he did that. I can't believe he said it. He's sitting next to the Japanese prime minister. It's a Japanese reporter asking the question, and here's classic Trump answer.
We went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right? He's asking me, do you believe in surprise? I think much more so than us. And we had to surprise him, and we did. And because of that surprise, we knocked out, the first 2 days, we probably knocked out 50% of what and much more than we anticipated doing. So if I go and tell everybody about it, there's no longer a surprise, right? Okay, one more for the Prime Minister.
Mr. President.
Are you good for the Prime Minister?
Yes.
Go ahead, for the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much. Japan's JJ Press. Japan's biggest concern is China. Now they're giving us export control and very harsh terms to criticize us.
And that, of course, was the press conference, which continued. And you just heard him say, you didn't tell us about Pearl Harbor. I mean, that's incredible. Absolutely incredible. But that is classic President Trump. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Al in Yonkers. Line 3. Al, first off, what's your reaction to, you didn't tell us of what you did when you came into Pearl Harbor in Hawaii that day, Japan.
Yeah, the president, definitely tells you how it is with the prime minister there. But I wanted to say, thanks for taking my call. I think the reason that the allies, I agree with you and all proponents of the president that our allies should be helping. But in England, you have the prime minister who hasn't been there that long. He's from the party of Labour, and they're like the Democratic Party here. They're very wary of any war. Margaret Thatcher was a conservative. She was from the Tories.
All right, so Al, and you are correct. Yeah, you absolutely are correct. But I think you're also making excuses for a guy who I actually think he's a Neville Chamberlain. I really do.
Yes.
I think he's beyond, liberal, because look, Bill Clinton took strikes. Obama took some strikes, in far off lands. And here we are in this moment. And you look at this guy, he's folding like a cheap suit. And it's so bad that so many even previous British prime ministers have been speaking out and just saying that they're appalled how he totally faded. He's like a wimp. And to me, it's actually really sad because you think of the relationship and the historic relationship between the U.S. and Great Britain through the years. I mean, Al, that's why. Yeah. I mean, you think of the power that this is not a Winston Churchill, and the fire and the power of that man and what he did in one of the most difficult moments in history. And I always believe also, Al, that certain moments make the person. And maybe part of it with me, Al, and you know this, I tell you guys, I'm a daughter of a prisoner of war. And my father, believe me, didn't want to go into World War II, but World War II came to him in Poland. And those moments you can either run and hide, and I'm very proud that my father did not run and hide. My father decided to stay and fight. And obviously everybody's decision is different, but my father was just a teenager, literally thrust into a country that was being obliterated. And here is Keir Starmer sitting, in comfy Great Britain at this moment. And there is obviously oil coming from the Strait of Hormuz that goes to many European countries, including his. So he has a greater interest in it financially than even the U.S. is. And obviously, with Iran flying missiles all over the place, they hit UK pretty quickly. Remember that installation? Yes. It was that UK embassy. It was that base, remember, in Cyprus, right? So, I mean, very early on, they already had them in their crosshairs. And this guy's folding like a cheap suit. I mean, to me, if you give somebody a grade for courage, he gets a 0.5, not even a 1.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just wanted to touch quickly England, of course, France, who are allies from the past. I think Macron also should be involved, but the reason he doesn't want to be is because he's at the end of his second term. He's having a lot of internal problems with the left, with Le Pen and the National Alliance. So he's had nothing but problems in his term, in his last couple of years, with the changes of president in the France. So they're having a lot of problems in France.
Which is why, and guess what? A lot of it by his own making, Al. Al, don't you agree? A lot of it by his own making, because he's turned a blind eye, and they're the no-go zones there in France where police can't even go because they're Muslim enclaves. He's allowed that. He's created it, and he can sit there and do his little fancy military parade with President Trump. Remember when he went over and did that? But if he's not going to use it all, it's all for show and tell.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. He should be definitely joining with the president to do something with the Strait. And I think in Germany, the reason they're reluctant, which is not, it's inexcusable, is that the German chancellor, he's fairly new. He's only been in there maybe a year. So he should definitely get it together and send some troops with the Americans in the Strait.
And, he's to the left of Angela Merkel. Come on. This guy, the fact that he came out almost immediately saying, it's not our war. I mean, can you imagine if we had said that about Ukraine early on? Sorry, not our war. What if we said that about a lot of other conflicts around the globe? And Germany, it certainly is. It's in their backyard, and there is also oil invested for them too as well. And, to me, this really is it's a disgrace. It really is a disgrace. And I think these countries should be ashamed of themselves. And I'm glad that they're coming out now. It's only because clearly of President Trump putting the pressure. And Al, you know darn well, if it was Joe Biden in the White House, first of all, he never would put pressure on them and call them out. I don't think he'd even be coherently aware that they were helping or not. But I also think I don't think he'd have the guts to call them out like Trump did. Do you have any doubt in your mind that it was Trump shaming them that brought them to the table?
No doubt. And it's also that the American government under the president, we give so much to NATO. So they owe so much to this country, what we did for France in World War II, what we did for England, how we helped the Germans after the terrible World War II to rebuild. So they definitely owe us a lot.
Yeah, they do. They do. It's going to be interesting to see also, Al, because we don't know what they're going to be doing. I mean, they said that they're going to help secure the Strait, that they have a willingness to do so. So I guess the question is, what are they doing? Are they giving money? Are they giving military hardware? Are they giving special minesweeping boats and materials. There's these underwater drones that can actually go down to as well. So what are they doing, or is this just all words at this point? So I think it's still yet to be determined, but I'm glad that the power of Trump has at least made them get a set of cojones, because it doesn't sound like they had one before. And I'm still not sure if Keir Starmer does or not. 1-800-848-9222. Everybody, we will continue after the break here on The Rita Cosby Show.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. It's the Rita Cosby Show.
And boy, there were a lot of fireworks inside the Oval Office today as President Trump was meeting with Japan's prime minister. She's very impressive, fairly new leader of Japan. And of course, he was close to the old prime minister as well. And she's an impressive woman, but you could even see her face was like, whoa, a couple times on some of Trump's comments. He was speaking truth to power. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Charlie on line 1 in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Go ahead, Charlie.
Thank you for taking the call, Rita. And I was just saying I agree with you totally with Trump's remark that came out of left field about the
Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor?
Yeah, Pearl Harbor.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, I love it.
Did you see her face? Her face, like,
huge. That's what I want to call you, talk about. The look of absolute surprise on her face is stunned on the prime minister's face. Her eyes got as close to being round as they were ever going to get. I mean, that look on her face, she was stunned. She was flabbergasted. But, I mean, that's Trump. He just puts it out there. I mean, the reporter fed him the question, and he said, look, we about surprise attacks. We didn't want to give up the advantage, the element of surprise. And I think his response is just great. He talks, President Trump, he talks like a regular guy. He thinks like a regular person. I just think he's great. Anyway, thank you for taking the call, Rita.
By the way, I thought it was one of those moments that will go down as probably one of the most powerful moments that I've ever seen, especially, it's so interesting, Charlie. I mean, I've been over there to Japan, and they're usually very restrained. I mean, I've been on the subway. I remember it's not like the subway in New York, but when you get to the subway there in Japan, they don't even talk to each other. They're very contained, very proper. And that was sort of her attitude when she came into the White House. But she had the delay with the translation, and you could tell, like, okay, she finally figured out what he said. And her eyes were like, as you just said, Charlie, they were two big, huge saucers. She was like, did he just say that? Yes, he did.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Rita Cosby is on. The Rita Cosby Show presents Back the Blue.
And this Back the Blue segment here on the Rita Cosby Show coming from Tamaqua, Pennsylvania, where an officer there, Dave Crape, saved a woman's life after her car rolled 14 feet into the river. The officer immediately sprang into action upon getting the 911 call. He climbed down the embankment, dragged her out of the car that fell into a river. And upon getting her out, he then lifted her on his back to safety. He also now is being honored for his bravery and quick thinking and exceptional life-saving work. The officer humbly said, I am not one to preach myself, so it's an honor. It's an honor to be recognized, but it is truly a team effort. EMS also had fire crews and others there eventually get on the scene, and all of them helped bring her to the hospital. She is expected to make a full recovery, thanks to our great men and women in blue. Well, in just a moment, we're going to talk to Josh Klein, who had a really powerful story about polls showing support by MAGA for President Trump on the war against Iran. But first, here's President Trump today. He was asked about this report that the Pentagon is looking to get about $200 billion from Congress to be able to replenish the military, to have it first and foremost always be ready. And President Trump was praising the American men and women and our great military hardware and the success that it's had against Iran, even just in the last few hours.
We have the strongest military in the world. We have the best equipment. We make by far the best equipment. The other night, they had 114 rockets shot at a certain location. And out of 100 highly sophisticated rockets, out of 114 sophisticated rockets, every single one of them was shot down with our equipment. All our equipment. It's amazing, actually, how good it is. So we want to be sure, and it's a small price to pay to make sure that we stay tippy-top.
Yeah. That is amazing. And really, you are seeing American military might on full display and working, obviously, with the Israelis. It's been nothing short of a historic military feat. Well, joining us now to talk about where this is politically for President Trump is the great investigative reporter Josh Klein with Breitbart. And Josh, it's so great to have you here on the Rita Cosby Show. Fill us in about the polls. You had a great story revealing MAGA support for Trump.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Rita, and you do unbelievable work. I put out a report, and it was picked up actually everywhere in very important places. Right now, there's this false narrative going on, and we're in the middle of a very, a complex operation. And it's showing that poll after poll after poll. This is 3 weeks in. This is a trend line. Numerous polls, probably 10, 15, 20 at this point, are showing unequivocally. If you want to start first with the MAGA base, it's on average 90 to 95%. Amongst Republican voters, it's about 85 to 90%. And then amongst all voters, there was a recent poll that came out actually 2 days ago from Rasmussen, which is very accurate. It showed that amongst all likely voters, 61% approve of the mission so far. And then people that are even more informed about what's going on and following this even closer, it actually even grows to 66% of all likely voters. So there's a huge gap between the narrative that is being pushed by certain elements on the right and the left, very loud voices, and the reality on the ground.
Yeah, that's a great point, because it seems like there is this sort of narrative, and yet it seems to be a very small minority, right, that's trying to sort of make the headlines. You also wonder with some in the media, it's like, Trump could cure cancer tomorrow and they'd blame the pharmaceutical companies, Josh?
No, for sure. It's kind of disgusting. We're in the middle of an operation. There's American lives literally at risk, and American lives have paid the ultimate sacrifice already. Thank God it hasn't been, in huge numbers, but every life is significant. And to kind of be rooting against America just because you might have a disagreement or, well, it's beyond that, a political hatred for the president. To actually root against your own country, to actually try and undermine, support for this is, it's just actually baffling, and I don't even have words to even put it in. It's upsetting.
It is. It is. Now, you've covered, obviously, a lot of these stories for a long time. Were you surprised that even within MAGA, it is 90 to 95%? That's big. And GOP, and then to your point, all voters overwhelmingly also saying they support this. Is there anything that surprised you about some of the numbers you've seen?
No, because in a way, I think there's this implicit trust between the base and President Trump that's been built up over a long period of time. Trump is not, and he is not one to go rushing into wars. He tried to exhaust every avenue and negotiate with this radical regime beforehand. So I think he built up the credibility, and they have faith and trust in him that this is, he's going to live up to his word. And this is not going to be a forever war. This is ending a forever war. Let's not forget this. This is a regime that's been fighting us constantly for 47 years. we've had president after president saying, oh, they're going to do something about it. And even worse than that, the stuff that they did about it was actually provide more resources towards this regime, which ultimately, wanted to build a nuclear bomb that screams death to America, death to Israel. And this is not just a mantra. I mean, they actually built a strategy around this, and they had plans to implement this. So I think that the MAGA base is smart enough to kind of see through this and has the trust and the faith in President Trump, and it's been built up, and he has that credibility. And in a way, I was not surprised by these numbers because of all that.
Yeah, no, you're right. And it's not like he has been in a rush to go to war. You could tell that he was trying to negotiate for a long time with Iran. They obviously did those strikes last year on the nuclear facilities. And then he said since then they started building it up. I mean, it was clear that they were obviously in a very destructive path, not just for the region, but potentially for the world. The last thing you want is someone like the Ayatollah having access to a nuclear weapon, or being able, with the ballistic missiles, the direction and the length of the ballistic missiles, the distance they could travel. There's so many issues here. What I thought was really powerful, Josh, was just earlier this week, we heard from President Trump, and he gave an interesting comment from the White House, kind of fitting to your point, where he said that the past presidents, and especially one of them in particular, said, hey, I wish I had done that. And then he was asked, was it George W. Bush? And he said, nope. And then then the reporter said, was it Clinton? And he said, I can't tell you, which probably means it is Clinton. But that's a very good point of lost opportunities with so many other, presidents in the past, that you have to admire that President Trump said, I will not allow a terrorist regime, the worst in the world, to have a nuclear weapon. He had obviously a lot of intelligence talking about their development and where they were at, and did the courageous thing for history, and wasn't thinking of the polls when he did it. He's thinking of, safety and freedom for the world.
Yeah, and then actually I would say another aspect that's kind of been underreported is the Arab world itself, the Gulf Arab world. I mean, that is normal, that is not, that doesn't believe in this radical theocratic, end of the world type of scenarios, which is Iran and this radical regime. The Arab world, there were reports of Saudi Arabia actually behind the scenes actually petitioning Trump to actually attack Iran. And now they're overtly saying, they've been attacked constantly over the past few weeks, but actually yesterday their foreign minister came out and said, enough is enough. You continue this and we're going to start attacking you back. So I think it's also kind of interesting and underreported, that aspect of it, that the Arab world itself, realizes how, the type of threat that this regime poses, and the necessity of it, being literally obliterated.
Yeah, great points. And in fact, even the attacks that Iran has done on many in the Arab world, many of their facilities and elsewhere, it really has backfired. And you could tell they've already, many of them put out this joint statement condemning the attacks by Iran. It's been remarkable to see that sort of coalition coming together against Iran, if you will. Trump is really realigning everything. And I think the American public, to your point, is seeing that and appreciating it and saying, thank goodness he had the courage in this case and in, so many others to step in to try to change the direction of the world. It is a noble task. Joshua, I want to make sure everybody, it's Joshua Klein _ on Twitter. So make sure that you check out Joshua and all his great work there at Breitbart, because you do such great work, Josh, and always have some good scoops. And you got to come back on again soon. We always love having you, Josh. It's great talking to you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Looking forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much, Josh. Thanks a lot. And everybody, I'll take your calls now. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Pete in Staten Island on line 3. Go ahead, Pete.
Hi, Rita. Yeah, we got to complete this mission. And our allies have to join them with us, because this isn't just about the United States. This is Israel, the United States, and all the Arab nations, that they've all been bulldogged by this country for years and didn't do nothing about it. It's about time our President Trump had the guts and the cojones, like the word that you use, as is big with us Italians, to step in and do it.
Yeah,
And
by
that
the
was
way, I
great.
use the Spanish word cojones, but it's the same thing.
Yes. Okay. But anyway, he was fabulous when he said about, the Japanese and Pearl Harbor. That was the whole thing, the element of surprise. That's what really worked and got us through this thing. Because, this is a threat. I mean, they could bring over bombs, and there's people in this country that all they want is things for free. And they got to learn there's nothing for free. Look at the sacrifices your father, my father, and all the men in World War II, World War One, the Philippines. The price of freedom is very costly. And I don't want to see boys dying, but, a lot of boys will be proud to keep this country free because that we have the ability to even talk on this radio. I don't know of any radio shows in Iran. I don't think it could even be possible where we have the freedom to say, and I love it. And I love this country, and I love Donald Trump. And you, Rita.
Thank you. And I love you and your wonderful wife, Renee, Pete. And Pete, I want to play because you brought up about the Pearl Harbor comment. I got to play this because it was definitely one for the record books. It was truly classic President Trump. And here he is again, a Japanese reporter says, maybe you should have briefed the allies more that you were about to attack Iran. In other words, lose the element of surprise. And boy, did he have a zinger. Here it is, Pete.
We went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right? He's asking me, do you believe in surprise? I think much more so than us. And we had to surprise him, and we did. And because of that surprise, we knocked out, the first 2 days, we probably knocked out 50% of what and much more than we anticipated doing. So if I go and tell everybody about it, there's no longer a surprise, right? Okay, one more for the Prime Minister.
Mr. President.
Are you good for the Prime Minister?
Yeah, that was classic Trump. Pete, every time you hear it, I just laugh, right? It's hysterical.
I fell out of the chair when he said that. I was sitting in my recliner, and I actually fell out of the chair laughing. And Renee goes, "What's the matter?" I go, "I got to replay this." So I winded the TV. I just learned how to rewind the TV back, in case you missed something. Because we listen to most of the news on 77 WABC because we want the truth and we want the up-to-the-minute news. Some of the stuff, especially the weekend happens, everything's all canned. Everything's all old stuff over and over again. And again,
by the way, not us, as you just said, Pete, not us, because we are live and it's all common sense. And you guys, I'm always going to have the very latest here, especially on the Rita Cosby Show. There is no doubt about that. Let's go also, Pete, thank you. Let's go to Mike real quick on the Lower East Side on line 1. Go ahead, Mike.
How you doing, Rita? Yeah, there's going to be a lot of empty tankers, oil tankers coming in through the straits. These countries got to provide manpower or womanpower to inspect them. They got to board them, inspect them for any major weapons like nukes, and even underneath, they're going to need divers. I mean,
by the way, Mike, are you trying to be politically correct? Because you said manpower or woman power.
Well, yeah, you know what I mean. I got a daughter too,
How about person power? Right? I'm just kidding. It's it's amazing. By the way, Mike, you probably saw the guy who's running. He's a Democrat who's running in the Senate race in Texas. He believes there's 6 sexes. So you might have to. We have to figure out what the other 4 are. So you can use it.
I'm only going by what the Lord has made. And that's a man and a woman, and I don't care about the others. That's their business. But Rita, that's very important that we don't get any surprises with these empty tankers. They could put a nuke in them, and they don't even have to shoot it, man. They could fire it right from the straits and destroy every European nation there. So it behooves them not to send any people down to help out. They need inspectors.
Yeah, no, they definitely do. And we need the best, most sophisticated technology to be able to detect if there is something like that, some sort of doomsday scenario. And these people are fanatics, as we've seen. Look at the attacks that they've done all over. You know, we hope we know what they have and what they don't have, but you also have to be prepared for any crazy surprises. And anything you can do to certainly avoid that is obviously paramount. Mike, great points. Always wonderful to talk to you. Thank you very much, Mike. And everybody, we're going to continue your calls after the break on The Rita Cosby Show, 1-800-848-9222.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. This is the Rita Cosby Show.
And coming up on the Rita Cosby Show, we'll continue to talk about President Trump taking those wimpy allies to task. And also, what about the new statements that have been revealed coming from the First Lady of New York? Vile, abhorrent. Those are just two of the words I can use to describe some of the statements that she posted on her social media in the past. And there's been enormous fallout. I think the time has come. She needs to either apologize, say she's evolved and will never say it again, and start hosting some big Jewish events there, or say she stands by it. And then maybe she and her husband should no longer be hanging out in Gracie Mansion. Let's see. I'll give them a slight benefit of the doubt, but it's hard to do that because it's absolutely disgusting. And the statements, the more I see them and the more we have seen repeated of them, it just shows this is a pattern, a troubling pattern. How did this guy get elected and why is he in the people's house? 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Joaquin in Pennsylvania, line 3. Go ahead, Joaquin.
Good evening, Rita. I got to tell you made me laugh this afternoon because you used my favorite go-to line that I use on my kids and grandkids when you were talking to the governors, and you said your favorite governor who's not here.
Yeah, that was a good, and that was when we were on, thank you, when we were on with Rod Blagojevich, who was so great. And then we had, of course, sitting right across from me was Governor Patterson. It was very cute. I thought it was, and it was fun to see the two of them going back and forth in a fun way. It was beautiful.
Yeah, I always use that on my kids. I'm like, oh, you're my favorite daughter that's here right now.
It's a good one. See, great minds think alike, Joaquin.
Yes, that's true. Anyway, you know something? I got to say a couple things, actually. The first one is that, you know, Donald Trump has always actually been America first and patriotic. And the one thing about him is that, you know, unlike many other politicians, no, he doesn't owe anybody anything, you know, so he doesn't have to answer to anyone. And so he's really going, you know, by what he truly believes in, whereas many times you have to question other people, what their motivations are. And unfortunately, when you look at the situation here with, you know, with the European countries, the EU, and I know that Britain, you know, pulled itself out of the EU, but still, you know, like King Charles and a lot of people in Great Britain, you know, they really want to bring in the globalist agenda. And so, you know, I think that them staying out, unfortunately, is that they really want to see us get worn down, and they want to separate themselves from us. And I think they really want to see us fail.
You know what? And that's really scary. And I think, obviously, some of the globalists do. I also think if you know, in England, there's an enormous Muslim population. Yet there are a lot of people in the Muslim world that are cheering on what's happening to Iran.
Thanks for listening to The Rita Cosby Show. You can hear The Rita Cosby Show weeknights at 10 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?